This is my Envy from Inside Out 2 cake topper. I recently made a sculpted cake of Envy and you can find that on my channel as well. But I actually made this little topper before I made the cake and I just think she's so cute and adorable that I thought I would show you how I did it. So this is Envy from the movie, and the key things to be able to make Envy look like Envy are to get that huge oversized head, tiny little body, and most importantly the sparkles in the eyes. So I'm going to talk you through how you can do all of that and how you can make her the perfect cake topper. So I'm starting off by just inserting a wooden kebab skewer into a polystyrene dummy. This dummy is 4" but it makes absolutely no difference how big the dummy is. And I'm going to put a polystyrene ball inside Envy's head just because the head is so big. So that will save me on some paste, and it will also I think make things a little bit more secure because the head is so big it could want to topple over. So that polystyrene ball is about 3 or 4 centimetres I believe. And I've just got my Tiffany coloured saracino paste. I've smoothed it out, put the ball inside, and then you just sort of roll it around until you're happy that you've got all the creases out and you've fully covered the ball. So I'm placing that to one side just to let it firm up a bit because it's quite soft, while I weigh out some navy saracino for the boots. So I've got just under 5 grams of the navy saracino here, and that's going to do both boots. So I rolled it into a little oblong shape to begin with, and then I've just pressed that down with my smoother in the middle and cut it in half, and I will use both halves for each shoe. So I've just pushed that down the skewer, and that's going to be the one that she's standing on, and I'm going to put the other one aside, and that'll be the one that she's kicking out with her leg to the side. So I'm going to build the body and legs now so that it looks like the leg is going inside the boot, and the way that I've done that is with about 15 grams of burgundy paste. I've rolled that into a long sausage shape, and then about halfway down I've split that in two, and basically that's going to be like a really basic body and then 2 legs, and I'm going to push that down the skewer so that it's going through only one of those legs, and then the other one's going to be kicked out to the side. I'm taking a piece of the navy saracino and I'm just wrapping that around the bottom, and now it looks like we have a leg wearing burgundy tights inside a blue boot. So now I'm taking a piece of modelling paste which I've coloured with lavender colour mill, and this is going to be our dress. So I've rolled it into a cone shape, and I'm just putting it against the body and making sure I'm happy with the size, and then I will put that aside to firm up a little bit before I attach it later. I'm going to work on the head now because that's where all the personality is. We need to get those eyes really big, and we need to get all that sparkle and emotion in the eyes. So I've started out using my biggest balling tool. I've pushed that into the paste, but I'm also moving it around within where I've pressed, as you can see, and that makes the holes for the eyes bigger. So all I've done is push that around into a circle shape, and I'm moving on to the mouth now, but I do come back to these eyes later and I'll make them even bigger still, and I'll shape them a little bit more because I wasn't happy with them. When I came to put the whites in, they weren't Envy's eyes. So with the mouth, I'm using my Dresden tool, and I'm using the smooth side to push down the shape of the mouth, and that's on the bottom right. It's not in the middle. We want it to be off to the side a little bit. So now I'm taking a little piece of black paste and I'm putting that just in the top half of the mouth, and that just makes the mouth look dark inside. And then in the bottom half of the mouth I'm going to put a little piece of red paste for the tongue. I don't think it's just, I think it's actually burgundy. I don't think it's just red. It's either a mix of red and something else, or it is a piece of burgundy, because I think the red paste is too red for a tongue. So yeah, I've just pushed that in to be the little tongue, and then I have got some white paste for the whites of the eyes, and it was round about now after I tried the whites in that I realised I just wasn't happy with the eyes. They needed to be a different shape and they needed to be even bigger. So I've used that balling tool again. I even used the smaller side of it, and I've pushed the top of the eye on the inside upwards so that they are sort of coming to a point in the middle. And then I've got some white paste and I'm just filling the holes that I've just made with the balling tool. So now that I've got the whites of the eyes in, I'm just going to put the head on top of a piece of kitchen towel, and I'm going to use my edible dusts to paint up the face. So I started out with a lavender coloured edible dust and a really fluffy brush, and I was going to use that for the sort of blush on the cheeks, because Envy doesn't have pink cheeks, she has purple cheeks. I wasn't happy with the colour of the lavender against that Tiffany colour. I went back and got a darker shade, which is burgundy. So both of those dusts are rainbow dust colours, and the burgundy just looked a little bit darker purple than the lavender, so it turned out a little bit better. So after I was happy with the cheeks, I was going to move on to the eyes. So I started by lining the top half of the eye with black edible dust. This is Black Magic is the colour, and I've just mixed it with the Culprit dipping solution to make it into a little paint. I like to make the paint for liner like this, or for things that need to be really thin. I like to make it more of a runnier paint because it will run into the grooves, and then if it's bumpy, which it is at the moment, you can see there, I can go back later and remove any bumps with a little bit of water on my brush and just dab it off. So by lining the top half of the eyes, that makes it look like her lashes, and then I'm going to work on the inside of the eyes, the irises and all the sparkle. So I've got two circle cutters here, and I'm just pushing those lightly into the whites of the eyes to get the shape that I can then paint round, rather than doing it freehand, which might be a little bit just not as neat. So I've used quite a big circle cutter to take up most of the space in the white, and then a slightly smaller one for the black iris. So I've got the colour Peacock here, and I've mixed that with the dipping solution as well, and I'm just going to paint that ring between the iris and the outside of the eye in that peacock colour. So that's all the colour for the outside of Envy's eye, is that sort of teal colour, and then the inside of the eye, the iris, which would normally just be black with most things, hers is actually like a gradient black going into like a dark blue. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm painting one half black and one half dark blue, and then once I'm happy with the colours for the sort of base of it, like the background colours, I'll wait until that dries a little bit, and then I'm going to go back and draw in the white sparkles, and that's what makes Envy's eyes really stand out. So because Envy's eyes are so cute and they've got so much detail in them, I wanted to put that amount of detail into my figure, because I think that's where you're going to see the most character come out. So I did spend a lot of time on the eyes and a lot of detail, so I've went back to that peacock colour and I'm just lining it with a green fractal edible pen, just to give it a little bit more dimension as well. So now I'm moving on to the highlights, and I've got a really small balling tool and I've got a bottle of white colour mill here. You could use any white food colouring, but I do think the highlights for any eyes, they always stand out so much more if you use a food colouring rather than an edible dust. I think what happens with the edible dust is they tend to absorb into the other colours that you've got, and it doesn't stand out as much. So I like to use the food colourings, but I would warn they take a lot longer to dry than the edible dusts do, so you can't touch it for a good period of time or you'll smudge it, and you'll see that slightly later on when I'm painting up the eyes. You'll notice that I've smudged it, so I did fix it, but be careful. So what I've done is I've put two little highlights sloping in a upwards to the right direction on both eyes with my balling tool, and then I'm using this silicone tipped modelling tool to pull the bottom highlight into a star shape. So all I'm doing is taking it into the middle of that white dot, and I'm pulling it slightly down at the bottom, slightly to the right, slightly upwards, slightly to the left, and that'll make a star shape. And I did that on both sides, only on the bottom one, and I left the top one in a circle shape. And I went back after that with, right here you can see I'm just using the very tip of the silicone tool to just add tiny little dots around those bigger highlights. And I'm just copying an image that I'm working from on my phone of Envy. So once I was reasonably happy with the highlights in the eyes, I put some little peacock coloured freckles on. I was just using a little silicone tipped, a little rubber tipped tool. It's a K220 or something like that it's called. But yeah, anything pointy will work. So as you can see now, like I said, I smudged the eye, so I'll have to go back and fix that. But I'm moving on now to the eyebrows. So I've got two little pieces of more of a teal coloured paste, because I wanted it to be a little bit darker than the skin tone. And I've just rolled them into tiny little bean shapes, and I've stuck them on just with water right above the eyes, but I've curved them slightly in the middle so that they're curving upwards, and that gives them more of an expression as well. This little brush I'm using is a water brush, and I'm just tidying up the smudging that I made with the eyes there. So now I'm going to move on to Envy's hair. So I took about 45 grams of the Tiffany coloured paste, but I did add some Colour Mill Teal to it, just so that it was a little bit darker than the colour of her face. So I flattened the paste into a sort of oval shape and then blended it around the back of her head, sort of like a cap or a hat. And then that makes the hair come around the back as well as the front, so you don't just have hair coming either side, you can also see the hair from what would be the back, if that makes sense. So where I'm dragging down my Dresden tool now would be the underneath of Envy's hair, and it just makes it look a little bit more interesting than if you just added pieces to each side of her head. So yeah, once that's on, I just put the Dresden tool right down the middle for her parting, and then I made lots and lots of wiggly hairlines to make her hair look wavy. And then I just added two little strands of hair sticking up at the top, just where her hair parts in the middle. These pieces are really thin, so they don't have a lot of strength, and my hands tend to be quite warm. So the key to this is make sure it's stuck down with your Dresden tool, and then you can just sort of hold it for a second until it's firm enough to stand up on its own. And then the even harder part is not bashing it when you're working on the rest of the model. So I'm going back to the dress now, it's firmed up a lot more and I'm ready to add it to the body. So I'm holding it against the body to decide where it's going to sit, and I decided that some of that burgundy had to come off, so I've just cut the top off of that, and then I've cut down the back of the dress, and I've cut the width of the burgundy to make it thinner as well. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap that purple dress around the burgundy body. So this part is going to be the front, and then this, you're sort of like opening it up and wrapping it round, and this is going to be the back. I've put some water in the middle, and then I know I've sped it up really fast, but all you need to do is bring them together and smooth them with your thumbs, and you should be able to make it fairly seamless. I've got a little tiny piece of the burgundy paste for the collar, and I've just wrapped that around where the neck would be, and I'm just shaping it with the Dresden tool to make it into the little triangular collar shape. So now I need to add the white polka dots to this purple dress, and I thought it would look a little bit better being painted on rather than putting little white dots all over it from paste, because they would obviously stick out proud of the dress. So yeah, I just used white snow fractal edible dust mixed with a dipping solution, and I painted on little polka dots all over the dress. So now I'm going to do the arms. I've just got a little bit of the purple paste of the same colour, and I've just rolled it into a sort of long cone shape, and then I'll bend it at the elbow, just using my fingers and thumbs to create that bend. And then I'm using my Dresden tool in the middle where the inside of the elbow would be to make the creases in the fabric where the dress would be creased from the arms being bent. And I just attach that to the body with some water. That's just my little water brush there. So for the hands, it can be a little bit complicated, and I did this exact same pose and exact same method in the sculpted cake video that I made of Envy. So you can see this on a much larger scale if you watch that video. But basically I've got a little ball of the Tiffany coloured saracino paste. I've rolled it in a little ball, and then what I'm doing here is I'm trying to make that shape with my own hands to see where the fingers would be. Envy doesn't have as many fingers as we do, but basically what I'm doing is I'm trying to make it look like we've got I think it's 3 fingers. So she got 3 fingers at the front and 3 going around the back of the hand, and I'm just doing that by creating lines with the Dresden tool. And once I was happy with the finger shapes, I used my finger and thumb to pull out little wrists on each side of the ball, and then I am making holes big enough to house those little wrists in the sleeve, and I can just push them in. That's why it's important to make sure the holes are big enough, because if they're not, you'll squash the little hands that you've just made. So I've now pushed them in, they're quite secure, and I'm going to work on that little shoe that's kicking out. I did leave that till last because I figure I'll end up knocking it off if I put it on too early. And you also want to make sure that the leg that's kicking out, you want to make sure that is firmer, because it's going to have to hold the weight of the shoe as well. So I won't lie, I did make a total pig's ear of this one. As you can see, I'm messing about with it, I'm squashing it, I'm taking it off, putting it back on. But the long and short of it is, if you can make a little bit of a boot shape that will house the leg and then push it on, that's ideal. You can try and do the same as what I did with the other leg as well, where you do the bottom half and then wrap the I want to say collar part, but I'm not sure what you call it, the ankle part around. So once I've got everything else all done, it's just a case of putting that gorgeous head on top of that body. So I put it on, and then I had a look at the picture, and I felt that it would look a little bit cuter if I tilted the head a little bit. So I was able to pull it off again, just tilt the head more diagonally and then push it back on. And then pretty much just the last little finishing touches now, I am using a lustered purple colour, so it's like a sparkly purple. Mix it with the dipping solution again, and I've just painted all over her head with that colour, and I think I even dry dusted some luster on as well, because her hair's really sparkly if you look at the picture in the movie. And here I'm showing the camera the figure, because I'm thinking, yay, I'm done, and then I realised that I had actually forgot to put on her little hair clips. So now what I'm going to do is take a tiny little piece of modelling paste and roll it into a really thin line of paste. Just here I'm using the burgundy coloured saracino paste just because I was just picking up whatever was to hand, because I didn't have anything the right colour for the clips, which are like a sort of violet purple colour. So I've just used whatever I had to hand. Literally just take that line that you've made, put it on the hair, and then loop it around, and it just looks like the hair clip that she's got, and there's really no detail in it, it's just a tiny little loop. And then once I got the paste in place for the clip, I went back and painted them purple. And that is pretty much it. That is how you make Envy. That's how I made Envy anyway. I really enjoyed making Envy, and I think she turned out pretty good. I do think she's probably a little bit too big if you compare her to the character from the movie, but I just loved how she turned out. Her face was gorgeous. I also made Sadness from Inside Out, and I started making Anxiety. So drop me a comment and let me know if you'd like to see the videos for those characters as well. If you're not already subscribed, then please subscribe, and thanks so much for watching.